Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot and welcome to my monthly reflections. Today we're going to be chatting about the decks I worked with, the books I read, and the videos I watched in February of 2021. So you know me, I like to jump right into the decks, so let's go ahead and talk about the decks that I worked with all throughout the month of February. So the first deck that I worked with in February is the Orbita Tarot, and this is the fairly new deck from the same creator as the Pythia Botanica and the Maiden Oracle and the Orbita Tarot. So this is kind of the deck that set the stage for what I was going to be working with in February because it was new, I was excited, and I really wanted to work with it. So it has gorgeous matte gold gilding. The production quality is the same as all of their other decks, and so it's really fantastic. I love the cardstock. I love the production quality. The backs are beautiful. Now, this is definitely a deck that focuses on, as they say on the box, from the soil to the stars. So you will see different elements represented in each of the cards. Now, I have done a full walkthrough of this deck on my channel, so I'll leave that linked in the description box below, but just wanted to do a real quick touch base with how I found working with it throughout the month. I really enjoyed it. I feel like this deck is a lot easier to read, both numerologically, intuitively, and if you work with a more traditional sort of Rider-Waite-Smith based system, I think this deck works a little bit better for that. It just kind of follows a system more so than I think the Pythia Rosa does, which is the other tarot deck by the same creator. I do love that deck, but it did take me some time to get to know it and to be able to work with it in a really powerful way. This deck was a much easier connection to make. And I really enjoyed the sort of minimalistic imagery that we have in this deck, the really soft, watercolory kind of tea-stained backgrounds I think are really lovely. And it just created a really wonderful kind of meditative experience working with this deck throughout the month. I found it to be really in tune with elemental energy, which is fantastic. I did really enjoy the write-ups in the little pamphlet, and I tapped into those quite often. There's not a lot here written on each one, but I think what is here is just enough to get you kind of your base message that you can expand upon. So I really enjoyed working with it in that way. And in the first week of the month, I just focused on this deck, so I didn't do any pairings, just did my basic 3-card readings with this deck on its own to just kind of get to know it a little bit better before I started mixing in other things with it. So the first pairing that I did actually do with this deck was the Orbita and the Sasuraibito Tarot. Now, these two decks I think read really beautifully together. Now, I most often do them in a 3-card configuration where I have my kind of central deck. This time I was using the whatever deck I was pairing with as the central deck. So this would be the main message and the Orbita would expand around it. And I think that this worked really beautifully for that. I really enjoyed the way these decks work together. Really pulls in the sort of earthy and cosmic element, blending those together. And then through the Sasuraibito, we add the human element, we add the humanity into the reading. And I really enjoyed that. It made for some really wonderful, kind of powerful reading. Here we have the Hierophant sitting between the 2 and 3 of Pentacles. I also really enjoy the way these decks play together in terms of their color palette. We have the bright, beautiful colors with a little bit of a softer tone over the top of it at the Sasuraibito, and then the really minimalistic minimal color palette in the Orbita, and I think that really balances each other out well because we get this nice central focus here in the middle, this big burst of color, and then this kind of muted, quiet, calm message to bring to the reading, which I think is really lovely. I think the Empress card in particular, funny that it comes up, is so suited to this deck. It just feels like it fits right in. It doesn't get washed away though, and sometimes when we pair decks, sometimes one deck has kind of a tendency to sort of dominate over the other or to sort of wash it away. And I think that these decks really complement each other well. So here we have the Empress in between the Ace of Cups and the Hermit. How beautiful is that? So again, that's the Ad Orbita Tarot paired with the Sasuraibito Tarot. So the next deck combination that I worked with in February was again the Ad Orbita. That's pretty much the consistent deck I worked with all month long. And the next week I paired it with the Spacious Tarot. Now these two decks surprisingly read really well together. Even though we have definitely a different art style represented here, the colors definitely blend well together, but I think most importantly, what these two decks both bring to the table is that idea of space, is that idea of the natural world combining with the other energies that we see, cosmic, human, all of that kind of animal, all of that kind of mingled together. I think they blend the energies really well. They're also both very quiet decks. They're very subdued in their energies and messages, and I definitely mean that in a good way. There is nothing really overpowering or confronting or in your face with either of these decks. Look at this, all cups, but look how beautiful they look together. One of the things that I really liked about this pairing is that the Spacious Tarot really does kind of focus in on the natural world, and the Ad Orbita also focuses on the natural world but pulls in that cosmic energy. These two together, I think, are a really meditative pairing. It was definitely a month of really calming, reflective decks and reflective readings. I mean, look at this. We have the Elder of Pentacles, this beautiful bear, just really in his element. He's comfortable, you know, he's there, and he's sitting between this kind of powerful swords energy. We have the Five of Swords here and the King of Swords over here. So really, really quite powerful sword energy, but we have this kind of calming, centered, really grounded bear energy in the Elder of Pentacles to really kind of ground us back into that message. And I really love the way that they work together in that sense. I do think they look quite beautiful together. I think the color palettes are quite cohesive. So I feel like these two work together really well just to kind of bring some space, some clarity to the readings. Again, they're very calm, very meditative, and I did really enjoy working with them. Again, I really love the Spacious Tarot in the middle with that pop of color and those kind of gentler, more minimalistic color palette and imagery on the sides, kind of taking that central message and really kind of just expanding it outward. But rather than being like an explosion outward, it feels more like a gentle spread. So we're just kind of easing into these larger messages. So again, that was the Ad Orbita paired with the Spacious Tarot. So the final pairing that I did for the month was the Ad Orbita with the Pythia Botanica, which is the Oracle deck by the same creator. So I just wanted to see sort of how the same decks, the decks by the same creator, kind of pair together, because I think that's always fun. We have that same similar type of background, the same minimalistic style, the same kind of color palette. So visually, they blend really well together. On a message level, I again used the Oracle deck here in the center to really create that focal point. So this would be connect, would be the kind of focal energy. And what are we connecting to? That Five of Swords and the Sun. And I think that it works really beautifully in that sense of really giving the reading a focal point. So kind of different from when I pair two tarot decks together where I'm really looking for the messages to kind of intermingle with each other. When I pair it with an oracle deck, I'm more looking at the oracle deck to just really provide a focal point. I think this is really wonderful for when you don't have a spread, when nothing has assigned positions. The oracle deck with just a great keyword or key phrase really creates a focal point for an otherwise unstructured reading. And by unstructured, I don't mean bad in any way, because most of my readings are actually unstructured. I very rarely use actual spreads with assigned positions. So here we have transfer grief. And we have the Magician, definitely a manipulator of energy, and death. So we need to transfer that grief and bring it out and manifest it into some positive change. So I think that's really beautiful. And I do really like the way these pair together. So again, that final pairing was the Ad Orbita Tarot with the Pythia Botanica Oracle. So a couple of other decks that I just wanted to touch on real quickly that I've been working with throughout the month is first and foremost the Sacred Mothers and Goddesses Oracle. I have done a full walkthrough of this deck on my channel as well. I have been finding this deck to be really wonderful to explore. Now, what I've been doing is really similar to what I showed in my walkthrough video where we're just gonna put that over there. You can see the backs. Where I pull a card and then I kind of let that card determine what deck I use to actually do the accompanying reading in the book. And that has been a really wonderful process. I have really enjoyed working with the deck in that way. I have touched base with the creator of this deck, Claudia Livios, and she has confirmed that she is working on more decks. She is working with the same publisher, and that would be Blue Angel, so that the decks will be the same setup, the same structure, the guidebook will be the same, and she kind of has the same idea that I was hoping for, and that to be able to create one ginormous, beautiful deck of Sacred Mothers and Goddesses. She's going to be exploring other cultures in upcoming deck. So just to kind of touch base with some of the information that the creator shared with me. So she is working on the next deck. This deck did take her 5 years. She's hoping for a little bit of a shorter time span this time and shooting for January of 2023 for the next deck. She is also planning on a journal / workbook to go along with it, and you better believe that's going to be right there on my purchase list as soon as that is available. It's just one that I've really been enjoying working with and do plan to continue working with for the foreseeable future. So the last deck that I just want to quickly touch base on is the Witch's Wisdom Tarot, and this is a deck that I have been working with and doing a deep dive with. I've created a journal for, and I've been using it this month as my single card pull that I've been doing for some prompts that I do every Wednesday. And it's kind of a series of prompts that I created for the How to Keep a Tarot journal. Last month I used, I think, the Naked Heart for that, and this month I am using the Witch's Wisdom, and that's been really wonderful. I've been really enjoying getting to know this deck. It does have a little bit of a different structure. It definitely follows more of a witchy or pagan type path rather than the traditional RWS that we tend to see in a lot of decks. And I love that it pulls in the elements and the numerology as well. That's really right up my alley. And so I've really been enjoying getting to know it. As you've probably heard me or several other people mention, the majors are actually in reverse order. And so it starts with the World and goes down to the Pilgrim or the Fool. And I think we just saw her a moment ago, but I really, really love the nature of this deck. I love the artwork. I think it's beautiful and the structure is really wonderful. So again, that's the deck that I have been working with through my deep dive studies for the last couple of months, and that is the Witch's Wisdom Tarot. So it was a really short month, so I didn't really pair a whole lot of decks or do a whole lot of deck switching. I kind of just sat with the decks that I had selected for the month and kind of worked with those. So now that we've talked about decks, let's talk a little bit about some of the books that I have been reading. We'll probably go through them pretty quickly because I've actually only finished 2 of them. The rest of them are books that I am currently reading or planning on reading. So the first book that I think I talked about this in January because I actually started this book in January, but I didn't finish it till February, and that is the 10,000 Doors of January. Now, when I first bought this book, like this cover was everything. It was part of the reason I bought the book. I love that it said January. January is actually, spoiler, fast forward if you don't want to hear it, the name of the main character. So it has nothing to do with the month of January, really, but I thought that was a great time to start it. This is a fantastic book. It is like a magical fantasy type of fiction story. It is beautifully written. I really enjoyed the characters in the book. It does also touch on some cultural and diversity issues as well, which I thought was really interesting. And it's just a beautiful, magical, powerful read. I really enjoyed it. It was a wonderful story. I do highly recommend it. So I already have her next book, which happens to be this one right here. The Once and Future Witches is on my to-be read list. So 10,000 Doors of January, I highly recommend, especially if you like those kind of magical stories. Not necessarily witchy, just kind of a magical fairy tale. I mean, there's magical doors in it. It's fantastic. So highly recommend this one. It was a fantastic read. So moving into the nonfiction books, the book that I finished reading is Year of the Witch. This book was fantastic. It is a wonderful, I think, primer into working with seasonal energy from a more witchy perspective. I love that it is not tied into one particular witchy tradition or another. As it says here on the book cover, it's connecting with nature seasons through intuitive magic. I'm very much intuitive when it comes to how my personal practice is. And so I really enjoyed this book because it was not only a blend of the seasons and working with seasonal energy, it was really heavily influenced by intuitive magic more so than following traditional magic paths, which I really did appreciate. So roughly the first half of the book is kind of your introductory kind of primer information where we have about the different elements. She does talk about intuitive magic, which I think is really wonderful, working with herbs and kind of creating altars and kind of just your, what I would consider your basic primer, although it's really well written, and even if you are a seasoned witch, I think you would still enjoy it. The latter half of the book is the seasons. So going through all of the Sabbats, the turn of the wheel, which I thought was really lovely. If you are looking to expand into maybe doing a little bit more work with the Wheel of the Year or seasonal energy as a whole, or looking to really tap into more intuitive witchcraft, I think this is a fabulous primer book, so I would highly recommend it. And I also just want to mention here real quick, even though this isn't technically a book I've read in February, although of course I have dipped into it in February, I get asked a lot about what book I recommend for working with the seasonal energy. And for me, that is the Witch's Herbal Apothecary. Now, while it is primarily an herbal book, this has fantastic information about each of the 4 seasons. It is more tuned into the 4 major shifts between the seasons. So we have winter, spring, summer, and autumn. It kind of focuses more on that, whereas the Year of the Witch focuses more on the actual Sabbats that we find along the wheel, the solstices and the equinoxes. So this one is more based on a kind of a general overview of the 4 seasons, although there is Sabbat information in this book as well. This is kind of the one that I recommend, but if you're new to the practice, I would definitely recommend actually picking up both of these books, The Year of the Witch and The Witch's Herbal Apothecary, because I think between the 2 of those, you would get a really good kind of starting point to move into your seasonal practice. So I just wanted to throw that in there real quick because I do get asked a lot about that. So a book that I started reading in February but haven't finished yet is The Dance of the Dissident Daughter. Now, this book, I'm having to take this book really, really slowly. Honestly, every time I pick this book up, it makes me cry. As it says, one woman's journey from Christian tradition to the sacred feminine. If this is something that you're interested in, if this is a topic that you're interested in, I definitely recommend it. It's been one that's been a really powerful read, but it's a hard read for me. Just based on my own personal things going on in my life, in my past. But it's beautiful and it's powerful. And every time I pick it up, I read a few pages and I cry. And sometimes it's a good cry and sometimes it's not. But it's a beautiful story. And it's been a very powerful read for me. So it's one that I'm working through very slowly because it's a very deep read for me. And it touches on a lot of things that resonate with me personally. And on the total lighter side of things, the fiction book that I'm reading this month is A Curse So Dark and Lonely. This is a young adult book, and sometimes I love reading young adult books because it's just like, they're just kind of a breath of fresh air. This is basically the tale of Beauty and the Beast, which is one of my favorite stories. I've always had a really big connection to the story of Beauty and the Beast, and so I'm really enjoying kind of diving into a different version, a different take on that. I haven't finished this book. I've really just kind of started it. It will probably one that I imagine I will read throughout probably March as well. So before we wrap things up here, I did want to share a couple of the videos that I've really been enjoying watching. Now, to be perfectly honest, I've been totally kind of immersed in journaling stuff throughout February, and I've been watching a lot of that kind of content on YouTube. But there are a couple of tarot related videos that I really wanted to just mention that I've really enjoyed. I actually meant to include this segment in January and start the year off with it. I don't know what happened, but I totally forgot to include it. So I'm actually going to include the ones that I wanted to mention in January as well. So the first is Denise from Heartside Tarot. She is formerly Minty Green Mama. She kind of started her channel back up again a little bit in January, and she did some wonderful videos kind of catching up on what she's been doing and the decks that she's been working with. And she did a journaling video, and I really, talking about her tarot journal, and I really enjoyed that one. Another one that I wanted to mention in January was Bonnie at Old Soul Mermaid had been doing a deck collection series. It might be wrapped up by now. She did it by publisher, and I just thought that was so clever, and I really enjoyed watching that. She has some fantastic decks in her collection. If you like deck collection videos, definitely go check out Bonnie's. They're great. Another channel that I wanted to mention is Emily's Tarot Magic. Emily was doing the 31 Days of Tarot, and I just really enjoyed her videos. I really enjoyed her answers to the questions and sharing kind of her practice and the decks that she works with. So that was really fun to get to know her. I do believe her channel is relatively new, so it's been really nice to kind of get to know her through her content. So in February, some of the videos that I really enjoyed is really recently, Julie at Peekaboo Rose did a video called Connecting with the Classics, where she talked about those 4 classic decks that I had mentioned last year that I had purchased because I just never gotten them. Julie kind of gave her response and her insights into what she thought after working with them for a little bit. So that was really fun to see somebody else kind of go through the same thing of like, we've been reading tarot, we've just never brought these decks in. And so it was really fun to listen to what she had to say. So that was really wonderful. I really enjoyed that. Another video that I really enjoyed was Kelly from The Truth and Story did a walkthrough of the Goddess Temple Oracle. I love Kelly's videos. They're always so in-depth. They're always so thoughtfully created. I love the way that she kind of incorporates her knowledge into what she's showing you. And I just really enjoyed watching and hearing about the Goddess Temple from her point of view. I walked away with so many little tidbits from watching her video that I think is going to really help me to connect with that deck as well. And the last channel that I want to give a huge shout out to is Wild Soul Journaling, because she makes the most amazing tarot journals. Or tarot/oracle. She does these art journals that are just absolutely fantastic. She also has some other content on there which I find really inspiring, very creative. She is a really bright, beautiful soul, and I really enjoy watching her videos. She's one of those that I could like I could listen to her talk all day long. She is very soothing, very comforting, and I really enjoy the kind of really thoughtful, meditative energy that is in all of her videos. So if you haven't had a chance to check her out, I highly recommend it. Particularly if you like art journaling or tarot journaling, her channel is absolutely fantastic for that, so I highly recommend it. I would also, of course, love to know your thoughts on the decks and books that we talked about today. Do you have any of them? Are they on your list? Have you had any experience working with them? So I'd love to know what you think, so please feel free to share with me in the comments below. I hope that you had a wonderful February, and I wish you many blessings moving into March. Thank you for joining me today. You'll find links for everything featured here in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.